So I'm just going to show you how I make my gluten-free sourdough. I'm starting this at about 8 o'clock at night, and right here I am putting in 150 grams of my gluten-free sourdough starter. Best to use it when it's at peak, which means it has doubled. Sometimes it doesn't double with the gluten-free starter, but as long as it's risen and looking nice and bubbly. Next I'm going to put in 100 grams of filtered water. Just at room temperature is fine. I like to use filtered water because it keeps any nasties out, which is much better for our bread. Then I'm going to put in 80 grams of brown rice flour. I am using some scales just to get those measurements nice and accurate. Then I'm going to use my dough whisk to give it a really good mix. A wooden spoon is fine too. Just binding all those ingredients together really well. So you can see it's quite a thick mixture and quite gooey. So you can see just like a thick batter consistency. Now I'm just going to get a damp tea towel and place that over the top, and I'm going to leave that overnight for about the next 10 to 12 hours, just on the bench. So it's about 7 o'clock in the morning, and in a separate bowl I'm going to add 220 grams of plain gluten-free flour. I'm using the Edmonds brand here. So just popping that in a nice clean bowl. Just trying to get that measurement accurate. Next I'm just getting my brown rice flour, and I'm just adding in 80 grams. Next I'm just going to put in 10 grams of sea salt. Sea salt does tend to be a little stronger, so sometimes I don't always put in quite 10 grams. Then I'm going to just give that a really good mix, combine all those ingredients together really well. Then I'm just going to pop that to the side. So then you're going to grab your bowl that we left overnight for 10 to 12 hours, and you'll see that it's become nice and puffy. I'm just going to pop that on the scales so I can get the next lot of ingredients nice and accurate. And first I'm going to start with adding in 20 grams of Psyllium Husk. Is it how you say it? I'm not even sure, but this is the one I use. This does act as a thickening agent, so you will notice after a while this particular mixture will thicken up and sort of go a little gel-like. Then I'm going to add 20 grams of raw honey is what I've got here. As an alternative, you can use maple syrup instead. but pure maple syrup, not the flavoured stuff. And I'm going to add 250 grams of filtered water. Again, just at room temperature is fine. And last but not least, we're going to add 10 grams of olive oil. Perfect. So now I'm just going to give this a really good mix together, incorporating all those ingredients really well. You will see that it is quite a liquidy mixture, but we're going to just set that aside for a few minutes and it will thicken as it sits. So after a few minutes, you'll notice that this mixture looks quite thick and almost porridge-like. And what we're going to do is add that into our dry mixture. And we're going to give this a really good mix together. Just combine that really well until it all starts coming together. If at any point it feels like it's too dry or too wet, you can add more filtered water or flour. So now I'm just going to get my clean hands in there and bind it all together. Which really is best done with your hands. Bringing it all together so that it starts to look like a ball of dough. Just a little bit of light kneading. Then I'm going to tip that onto the bench just so that I can knead it together a lot easier and use the bench to press up against. As you can see, I'm not spending a lot of time kneading it, just enough to bring it together in a ball. Give it a few pats. Then I'm just going to get a small bowl and line it with a dry tea towel. I'm just going to add a little bit of rice brown flour. And also some on the top of the dough. I'm going to flip it upside down so the smooth side goes into the bowl first. I'm going to cover that up and I'll leave that for the next 3 hours just on the bench, or you can go overnight in the fridge. So after your dough has been on the bench for about 3 hours or been in the fridge overnight, it's time to put the oven on. So I'm putting it on 220 Celsius and I'm going to put my cast iron pot in while it's heating and making sure I put the lid in separate to the pot and leave that for 45 minutes. After about 45 minutes, when your oven has heated up, I'm just going to get a sheet of baking paper ready and get my dough out, and it should look nice and puffy. Just going to flip that over onto the baking paper. Then I'm going to get a nice sharp knife and score my dough. So you're just making a nice deep cut through the middle. I'm actually going to do a cross. So I'm doing 2 cuts. But this is just so that the air can escape, which gives you a nice puffy aerated loaf of bread. And I'm just putting a little cut in between each corner just for decoration. Now I'm just going to carefully get my cast iron pot from out of the oven. And I'm just going to gently lower in the sourdough into the pot. And this is what it looks like with the scoring that I did earlier. I'm just getting some water and just giving it a little flick. Use a spray bottle if you like. Then I'm just going to get the lid from out of the oven, which will also be very hot. So be very careful. Place it on, ready to go. Now I'm just going to put it in the oven. And you'll notice that the rack I have it on is not too close to the bottom, but enough so that the pot fits in. And I'm just going to set the timer for 45 minutes. Now we wait patiently. When the timer goes off after 45 minutes, I'm just going to carefully take the lid off. You can see it has risen beautifully. And now I'm going to leave it in and cook it for another maybe 15 minutes, but you do want to watch it because at this stage it's all about how brown you like it. When it's the brownness you like, it's time to come out of the oven. I am going to gently lift it out and put it on the bench to cool down. Best to cut when it's completely cool, but there we go. Beautiful gluten-free sourdough.